I think to understand, though, as you said, where's Mary in Scripture, I think obviously we need to look back, I think even obviously in the Old Testament, because we begin to see references there. You know, if you study the Old Testament, you see what's called types. Those are things that point obviously to the New Testament, and we can't get into all of those. But if you look at the very beginning, who are the three characters in the fall? Basically, it's Adam, it's Eve, and of course, it's the serpent. You also have a tree. And so you see the types, and we could go into multiple ones of those. But when you see that, and already you see the proto-evangelium that is pronounced there in Genesis, right? Where God says, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. And so we make sure we see that word woman. And that is important, because then we begin to see that reference to woman, right, in the New Testament. As we see it, first and foremost, we see it first time. We've already had Mary, exposure to Mary, but as far as the woman, using that word, we see that at the wedding feast of Cana, right? And in John's gospel, you know, woman, what does this have to do? What does that have to do with me? The correct translation is woman, what does this have to do between you and me? That's the correct translation,
right?
According to our venerable Fulton J. Sheen, my hero. What does this have to between you and me? Already saying you're the woman, that woman from Genesis.
Yes.
Was between you, and then of course Mary says, you know, do whatever he tells you. You know, so Mary, we're already beginning to see that she is that new Eve. And then, of course, we see woman again. When's the next time we see it?
The foot of the cross.
At the foot of the cross. Woman, behold thy son. Son, behold thy mother. And there is the cross. There's the tree. The first tree, of course, they fell from. And the fruit was the poison of sin and death. And now we're at the next tree with the new Adam, Jesus. With the new Eve, Mary. And there's the Mary below. And the fruit of the tree, of course, we know is salvation. And then, of course, we see the woman reference to Mary the last time in the book of Revelation, right? Where we see the Ark of the Covenant in the sky. And then Mary is that Ark of the Covenant, the sign in the sky that it discusses. She's the woman once again in the sky. So you're seeing those references, and we could go into that in more detail, but you see the references right there of the Blessed Mother. I mean, I grew up not really thinking about woman, and when that kind of really kind of hit me, as this is powerful.
Yeah.
You know,
it's good stuff.
It's good stuff, and good stuff.
I wonder to myself, I think a lot of people might have a hard time with Mary. Perhaps because there may be legitimate mother wounds that people have experienced, similar to people have struggled to understand God the Father because they all have their own personal father wounds with their earthly fathers. So in the same way, like, it would translate that if Mother Mary is meant to be the mother of the church, the mother of all of us in that way, as Christ gave her to us at the foot of the cross, if we have had strained relationship with our earthly mother, it may be part of that, and it could be our inability to honor our parents because of the pain or abuse or frustration that we've had with them. It could also be that we just didn't get any solid upbringing or understanding of that relationship that we should have toward the Blessed Mother or to God the Father.
Sure.
Because our parents may have been nice and loving in some ways, but if they don't propagate the faith and transmit that to their children, that's still on some level detrimental to our ability to understand these relationships that are so critical, because no matter what, mothers and fathers on earth can't completely fulfill the need to be fathered or mothered in the fullest sense of the word, right? Only God the Father can do that. Only Mother Mary can do that. And so when you arrive at that realization, it's very healing. And that's when Mother Mary nurtures us, similar to a mother nurturing her child. But now, whereas adults, it's a little bit more difficult to admit that you're a child in the face of God.
Sure.
Right.
You know?
Right. She nurtures you, but then as you said, she's at the foot of the cross. I always think I've grown so close to the Blessed Mother, but sometimes the more you go closer to her, you recognize, of course, the cross. Sometimes the cross is there, ever present. You know, because she will, if she's going to lead you to Jesus, then you recognize, okay, the cross sometimes becomes more poignant, becomes more real. I mean, in my own life, that has happened. But then once again, that since having that relationship with her and whatever wounds that you have to deal with, I mean, you've got someone to call out upon too, and that's the Blessed Mother.
Yeah.
She's
Was
She's
it
awesome.
Yeah,
was
she
it
is.
Fulton Sheen or was it someone else? I hate doing this because I always have these ideas in my head, but then I always misattribute them.
God will forgive.
Someone
That's being immersed in the
said,
Catholic life. It
I
happens.
think it was Gandalf who said, "Use the Force, Luke."
That's right.
Okay.
But
That's
anyways,
cringeworthy.
Someone had someone said something like, Mary on earth suffered more than all of the saints and martyrs combined.
Yeah, I don't know if it was. I don't know if it was Fulton Sheen.
That sounds right.
I've heard that before, though. You're right.
It's something, and tying that to the devotion to our Mother of Sorrows.
Is it Father Ripperger? I feel like I've heard
Maybe.
it.
I don't know.
I've definitely heard it too, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, because obviously you suffer the closer you are to Christ, right, the closer you are to Christ and the life of Christ within you, then when suffering does either come to you or it comes to those around you and the things that you see with empathy or compassion, the closer to Christ, the more you're gonna suffer.
Yeah.
But there's no other person that was closer to Christ than the Blessed Mother. So it makes sense that she would then, she's Queen of Martyrs, right? Even though no blood was ever drawn from her in the true sense of martyrdom. You're right, but she would have known all of that suffering. So that's, once again, that would help us, as John was saying, to be able to really connect with our own wounds and things that we've had. She's going to be there to be able to help to walk with us along the way.
That's one of the other amazing things that, I never heard talked about when I was a Protestant, that it's very apparent scripturally as a Catholic, is you always see the image of the Sacred Heart or the Immaculate Heart or Mary or Jesus with the Sacred Heart or the Immaculate Heart exposed. I'm like, well, where does it talk about their hearts in the Bible? And then it's crazy how often the references come up in Scripture, and especially in the case of Mary with the sword piercing her heart. And the Seven Sorrows really reminded me of that. And it's like, wow, it is very scriptural that sword would pass through her heart. And it's so powerful, and it's right there in the Bible. And that's the thing about the Bible, is that's, I think, part of what keeps it so beautiful is it's a very quick sentence, very beautifully written, but it's also so mysterious. And as Catholics, we've spent the last 2,000 years unpacking a lot of this stuff, but a lot of it still remains really undeveloped theology. And
well, think about it. 1,700 years in, St. Louis de Montfort emerges on the scene and is really promoting consecration of Mary, but he even predicted that it's going to be suppressed. Everything I've written will basically be ignored for centuries, and then it comes back. And now there's more Catholics and consecrated to Mary than I think possibly in all of church history at the right time. And that, on some level, is awesome, and another level, it's kind of overwhelming, because so it's like that fear of the Lord idea, right? There's this wonder and awe, but there's also a recognition of Mary's at the foot of the cross. And if that many Catholics are being consecrated to Mary more than ever, what are we being prepared for? Right. What kind of suffering might be coming?
That's true.
Not in a morbid way, but in a way that trusts in the resurrection, right? Because we also experience Mary in the Assumption and in the coronation, right? But that might be another episode.